Just over a year ago, I uploaded my first YouTube video, and since then you guys have been supporting this channel so much. I honestly cannot thank you enough. I really do appreciate it. Lots more content will be coming soon, including a couple of friendlies before the start of next season, where we're going to be going abroad a few times and also enjoying lots more Premier League action. So thanks again for your amazing support, and I hope you enjoy this video. Yes guys, welcome back to the Matchday experience. Today I'm going to be giving you my Premier League predictions for the 2023-24 season. Now of course the transfer window hasn't shut yet, but I want to give you my predictions early before the season so that you guys can get an idea of what I think will happen in the next Premier League season. Naturally though, there may be a few changes to my predictions after the transfer window has shut, simply because all of the Premier League clubs would have finished their business. But regardless, I'm going to give you my predictions now, starting with the bottom, so the three teams I think will get relegated. We're going to start at rock bottom. 20th place, I think it will be Sheffield United. Now towards the end of last season, I actually went to see Sheffield United in the Championship. I had a great time, however I don't think their squad is good enough to keep up with the Premier League, and therefore I think they'll be going straight back down to the Championship. The Blades have made a signing though in Anis Slimane, the Tunisian midfielder from a Danish club as well. I think he will do alright for Sheffield United, however they do look set to lose Iliman Ndiaye, who is a massive player for them. A young, creative, attacking midfielder with lots of talent, brought a lot to Sheffield United last season, adored by the fans. For him to be going, it's a massive loss for them, and therefore I think they will finish rock bottom in 20th. Moving on to 19th, now this is where it actually gets controversial because I've gone with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now before the Wolves fans slam me in the comments, let me justify it. They have simply lost too many players. João Moutinho, Ruben Neves as well. That Portuguese link-up in midfield played a key role for Wolves over the last few years. Granted, they didn't do too much last season. However, Ruben Neves especially is a massive player, or was a massive player for Wolves. Also, they've lost Nathan Collins to Premier League rivals Brentford. I think that's actually quite a good signing for them, but a huge loss for Wolves. Max Kilman was also set to leave. I heard rumours that he would be off to Napoli. Also, they've lost their club captain Connor Cody. I know he wasn't with them last season, however he is still a massive figure to have around the club, and for him to go to Leicester is a fantastic signing for them, by the way. They'll be coming straight back up to the Premier League. But yeah, Wolves 19th. I know it may seem really low, but for me I just don't think their squad is strong enough anymore. Yeah, not very ideal for the Wolves fans. I do feel quite sorry for them. They have also re-signed Matt Doherty, which I think is a really good signing. He was fairly popular with the Wolves fans before, and of course he had a decent spell there, so it will be quite interesting to see how he gets on, but I think it's a good move all round, to be honest with you. Perhaps they'll finish 18th rather than 19th, but one thing's for sure, that they'll be definitely in and around the relegation zone. Of course, Julian Lopetegui is a fantastic manager, however if he doesn't get exactly what he wants, he may well leave, and then things will just go downhill from there. Next up, 18th place, another side joining Sheffield United in the Premier League and will be going straight back down in my opinion, is Luton Town. To be fair to Luton, they have made a few decent signings, including Chong, who used to play for Man United and Birmingham. I know that he's fairly highly rated. They've also signed Ogbene from Rotherham. Now, I don't really know too much about the forward, however, I do know that he had a fairly decent season last year, but can he do it in the Premier League? We shall wait and see. They have lost Sonny Bradley, who I actually think was a really good player. I watched a fair bit of the Championship last season, and he stood out to me when he was playing, although he has been replaced by Mads Andersen from Barnsley. Huge loss for the Tykes. However, I think that he'll do all right in a Luton shirt, but for me, they just won't have enough. Yes, Kenilworth Road could become a little bit of a fortress for them when the ground has been renovated, but for me I just don't think they'll have enough, especially on the road. I feel like they'll struggle with going to the big sides, and I can see them getting smashed by Man City. They've also signed Marvelous Nakamba on a permanent deal from Aston Villa, which is a really good signing if you ask me, especially with how crucial he was to Luton last season. However, I still can't see him staying up. But I'm not going to be biased though, these are my completely honest predictions. And next up, in 17th place, just avoiding relegation, we have Nottingham Forest. Now last season they may have signed 1 billion players, however this season they've had to release a few, including Jesse Lingard, Andre Ayew. They seem to have signed so many players, all fairly decent to be honest with you, but yet still played the same ones every week. Brennan Johnson's firing, don't get me wrong, if he has another good season, as well as Taiwo Awoniyi, he was fantastic last year, banging in goals. Forest also lost Renan Lodi, he's gone to Marseille, however they have brought in a right back from Torino, Ola Aina, or Aina I think it is. Don't really know much about him, so it'll be interesting to see how he plays. But to be honest with you, I think they'll be in a relegation battle. I do think they'll survive though. I'll be surprised if they go down, but I can't see them finishing mid-table. It's definitely going to be a bottom half finish for them. Moving on to 16th, we're going up to Merseyside, as I believe Everton will finish in 16th place. I went to see them actually last season at Goodison Park as they beat Brentford 1-0. That was really good. They've also signed Ashley Young. I think he was a massive signing. He's quite old, to be honest with you. He's in his late 30s, but he was fantastic for Villa last season, and we saw just how well they did. They have lost Yerry Mina, which isn't really ideal for them, and also Ellis Sims on a permanent to Coventry City. I really like Sean Dyche as well. Of course, he did really well at Burnley. Another man I must mention is, of course, Arnaut Danjuma. Was going to be signing for Everton a while ago, but of course went to Spurs. That didn't end too well for them, but finally he is a toffee, so we'll see how he gets on. But Evertonians, I wouldn't be too worried. I can't see you going down. Moving on to 15th, I've gone with the third and final promoted side, Burnley. Now, I watched them in the Championship last season and I must go and see them in the Premier League. A few of you guys have been asking me to go back to Turf Moor and watch a game, and to be honest with you, I would absolutely love to do so. Vincent Kompany absolutely transformed that side last season into a team that stormed the Championship, one of the hardest leagues in the world, just because of how close it is. And I think next season as well, it's going to be so close. Pretty much all of the league next season will have the playoffs as their targets. They really want to get in there, but Burnley, they got out. They won the league in style as well. Can they do it in the Premier League though? I think they will. I think Vincent Kompany is definitely good enough to do it. They've also made a couple of signings as well, which I think will boost their squad, and they made a fair few amount last season. For me, they were just too strong in the Championship to come back down. I just can't see it happening. They've also signed James Trafford, a fantastic goalkeeper. We saw just how well he did in the Euros with England's under-21s, winning it and not conceding a goal throughout the entire tournament. Nathan Redmond from Besiktas also isn't a bad signing, but let's hope they can play well next season. Another team that completely surprised us last season was Bournemouth. We all thought they were going to be going down. I certainly did. I didn't make a predictions video, however I definitely would have predicted Bournemouth going down at the start of the season. I did watch them away to Wolves and they won 1-0. The fans were decent, to be fair. They played some alright football, but with this new manager coming in from Spain, I think he's going to transform that team. Justin Kluivert coming in as well, decent additions to a Bournemouth squad that's already alright, to be fair to them. They haven't got a really weak squad. They've got a few players that can bang in the goals, like Dominic Solanke. Dango Utara as well was fantastic last season. They've got a solid keeper in Neto as well, of course coming from Barcelona. I must also add that I'm going to watch Bournemouth before the start of the season as they take on Atalanta in a pre-season friendly, but I don't think Bournemouth should be worried about relegation. I think it'll be a fairly comfortable season for them. Next up, in 13th, we have Fulham. Now, to be honest with you, I think they really overperformed last season. Yes, they have a few decent players in the squad, the likes of Joao Palhinha, Andreas Pereira, and of course Alexander Mitrovic. However, he looks like he's set to be going off to Saudi Arabia. It'll be a huge loss for Fulham should he leave and join a Saudi Arabian side. For me, Fulham will finish around about 13th, a mid-table finish, which isn't really bad for them. Next up, we have Crystal Palace. Everybody knows they finish between 11th and 15th every year. They're never ever in the relegation battle and they're never pushing towards Europe. They are just that mid-table, comfortable side in the Premier League. I think they'll finish 12th this year. It'll be interesting to see how Roy Hodgson does with a full season in charge, but they do have a few ballers in the side. Eze, Olise, Mateta as well. I rate them really highly. But Wilf Zaha though, he's interestingly gone to Galatasaray, who are building a pretty good squad of their own. A bit strange considering how much money they were offered for him a few years ago. Perhaps they could have sold him then, but him leaving on a free isn't really great for Palace considering he's their star player. But what a signing for Galatasaray. I can see around a 12th, 13th place finish for Crystal Palace. Jefferson Lerma as well was a fairly decent signing in the midfield for them. I've also heard that they're linked with Folarin Balogun. If they get him on loan, that'll be fantastic for them, and therefore I've put them in 12th. I don't think it'll be anything to worry about, just a usual season for Crystal Palace. Next up, in 11th place, you may have thought that I'd predict them to finish lower. However, I've gone with Brentford. Now let's talk about the most obvious thing when it comes to Brentford, Ivan Toney and his ban from football. That will of course be a massive loss for Brentford. He scored so many goals for them, and also even when he's not scoring goals, he's still helping out the team. His hold-up play is fantastic and he is a really good number 9. It's a shame that he didn't really get to do too much with England, but I think in the future, once he's back from his ban and he's redeemed himself, he'll be in that England squad in no time and also helping out Brentford towards the middle and end of the season. It is important to mention that they signed a couple players from Freiburg, including Kevin Schade on a permanent. He's fairly good. He's played for Germany's under-21s a few times, I believe. And also the goalkeeper, Mark Flecken, fantastic keeper. I know they still currently have David Raya, or they do at the time of recording this, but I still think that Flecken will start and he's a brilliant keeper. I think he'll keep Brentford in the game a few times this season, and his clean sheets will be really valuable for a team like Brentford, especially when they're not necessarily going to be scoring as many goals without Ivan Toney, despite having players like Schade, Visser, and of course Mbeumo in the team. I think Mbeumo playing in that striker role will do quite well. He also performs decently when he doesn't have Toney next to him because he gets more of the ball. But it is important to know that the team obviously isn't all about Ivan Toney. Yes, he's one of their star players, probably their best player, but they still have a fantastic midfield, including players like Jensen, Norgard, Janelt. Nathan Collins from Wolves is another great signing for them. I think that he'll do quite well. Huge loss for Wolves. I don't know how they've let him go like that, but if you're Brentford, you've got to be very happy with that signing. Moving on to the top half of the table, I'm going with West Ham United. At the time of recording, they've just lost their captain, Declan Rice. Obviously a massive loss for them. Their star man, a standout player, a midfielder that helped them win the Conference League last year. Of course, that was a brilliant achievement for West Ham, winning the trophy. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with the money from the sale of Declan Rice, to see who they get and how many players they get, because they possibly will need a few players to join them. But I certainly think a few new players are needed. I know they were linked with James Ward-Prowse as well. Of course, he was relegated with Southampton, but he's an all-round midfielder that could actually suit West Ham quite well. I think Europe will be a target for them, but they will struggle massively without Declan Rice. In ninth place, you're probably going to disagree with this one. However, I've actually gone with Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, this is a really weird prediction considering how well they did last season, of course, achieving Europa League football. However, I'm only saying they're going to finish ninth because I think they're going to go really far in the Europa League. I can see them definitely getting to around the quarterfinals, semi-finals, possibly even the final, to be honest with you. Roberto De Zerbi's got them playing some fantastic football. They, of course, did lose Alexis McAllister, who is a massive loss for them. We can't really avoid the fact that he's going to leave a huge hole in the team. Caicedo, I believe, also wants to leave. It'll be interesting to see if he does or doesn't. They have, however, brought in Mo Dahoud from Dortmund, a brilliant midfielder. Perhaps he's there to replace Alexis McAllister. I don't think he can quite do that, but he can definitely offer something a little bit different. I actually quite like Mo Dahoud. Also, João Pedro from Watford. I watched him a lot last season. A creative playmaker, can play in the number 9 role or in the number 10 role. He's just a player that you really want in your side. A player that's going to make something happen, a little bit like Alexis McAllister, to be honest with you. So yeah, a 9th place finish for Brighton in the Premier League, which isn't too bad. I know it sounds bad considering they've just got Europa League, but I think they will go quite far in that competition. Next up, in 8th place, I've gone with Mauricio Pochettino's Chelsea side. Now, he's got a pretty big job on his hands. Chelsea have got rid of so many players. They've had a huge clear out, which was clearly needed. However, they've also brought in a few superstars, including Christopher Nkunku, who for me is one of the best attackers in Europe right now. He is phenomenal, absolutely brilliant. And if he gets going at Chelsea, if Poch can use him the way that he should be used, he will be firing in many goals. And not just firing in goals himself, but also helping his teammates, including Nicholas Jackson, who they signed from Villarreal. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but it is of course important to mention just how many players they've lost, including club captain Cesar Azpilicueta. He will be a big loss off the pitch as well. Christian Pulisic, N'Golo Conte, Koulibaly as well. So many players leaving that Chelsea side. Also, Kai Havertz going to Arsenal. That's a bit of a crazy transfer. But regardless, I think they'll just miss out on European football. I think it will be an improvement for them. I think Poch will get them playing some decent football, especially with Nkunku leading the line. Let's give Poch the benefit of the doubt and see how he gets on with his first few games in charge of Chelsea. So then moving on to the European places, in 7th place we have Tottenham Hotspur. Now, last season for them wasn't really ideal, to be honest with you. Of course, not getting European football. They didn't have a good one. Harry Kane, of course, played all right. One of their star players, Heung-min Son, definitely didn't have his best season. However, I think that he'll redeem himself and play really well next year. That said, Ange Postecoglou, in my eyes, is not the man to take Spurs forward. A few managers, of course, rejected Spurs, and to be honest with you, I think they could have done a little bit better than Ange. I'm not trying to disrespect him. I know that he did really well at Celtic. However, for me, you can't quite compare Celtic and the Scottish League to Spurs and the Premier League. Celtic are one of, if not the biggest club in Scotland. But when you're managing a team like Spurs with really high expectations, their fans want more, they're always wanting more, and to be honest, I can't say I blame them. We say they're a Big Six club, but they haven't won anything in ages. Is Postecoglou the man to win them a trophy? We'll have to see. But James Maddison is a fantastic addition. But I just think a 7th place finish isn't too bad for them, bordering the Europa League, possibly edging in towards 6th and 5th. But either way, I'm fairly confident that Spurs will get some sort of European football next year. Now then, on to the Europa League places. In 6th place, I've gone with Aston Villa. Perhaps some of you guys will think they'll finish a lot lower. I also got asked by some of my mates why I think Villa will finish so high, and here's why. Now, I must mention that I actually think they'll go quite far in the Conference League. So now you're probably wondering why I put Brighton so low and Villa so high. To be honest with you, I think the Conference League just isn't quite as good as the Europa League. The Europa League is a lot more competitive. The teams that play there are really decent sides. Of course, Brighton and Villa are starting to fall into that category. I think it will also give them a chance to play a few players that aren't necessarily getting into the team every single week. But it's also a chance in Europe. The fans will love the fact that the team is playing in Europe again. They've got such a good squad now. Their depth as well is fantastic. Of course, they did lose Ashley Young, who played quite a lot of times for them last season, to Everton, but they've brought in the likes of Yuri Tielemans to strengthen that midfield. What a signing, by the way. That is such an underrated signing. Players like Ollie Watkins cannot stop scoring. Their midfield is so deep now. And for me, I just feel like all of the pieces of Villa's puzzle are starting to come together. And with the signing of Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen, Villa's squad is just getting stronger and stronger. A brilliant signing, a player kind of similar to Leon Bailey, whom they already have. However, for me, DRB is a little bit better, and I think he can offer a hell of a lot to Aston Villa, and like I said before, they're going to do well this season, I'm telling you. Moving on to 5th place, I've gone with my team, Newcastle United. Now, of course, the focal point of Newcastle United's transfer window is without a doubt Sandro Tonali. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok saying that he's not really happy to be in Newcastle, but you can't judge him. I don't get it. People are saying, oh, he's not happy to be here, he wants to be in Milan. Perhaps he does, but whilst he's here in Newcastle, I don't see why he won't give it his all. When he's wearing black and white, the fans are always going to back him, he's representing the badge, and I don't see why he won't do well for Newcastle United. Another signing for Newcastle is of course Harvey Barnes, a left winger, fairly versatile. I think he's quite good, possibly not really as good as St Maximin in my eyes, especially for what he's done for the club, but I can't complain. He's joined up with the lads in Philadelphia. Let's see how he gets on, but I think Harvey Barnes is a very positive signing for Newcastle United. I know that a lot of Newcastle fans think that the only way is up from here. We finished 4th last season, got into the Champions League spots, but I can't see us doing it again, to be honest with you. I'm not going to be biased, like I said. These are my honest predictions. I'm not going to say we're going to finish first, because realistically it's not going to happen. We had a fantastic year last year, and I think we'll do well again. Eddie Howe's been brilliant since he's been in charge of the team. Of course, Jason Tyndall as well, we can't forget him. But yeah, I can see the Geordies finishing 5th. I also think that we'll focus a bit on the Champions League. I doubt that we'll win it or get very far, but it's a massive thing, especially for the fans as well, to see their team playing Champions League games. It's back at St James's Park over 20 years. I'd love to go and watch a game. However, I know for a fact already that it's going to be almost impossible to get tickets. But regardless, I can see it being another really positive season for Newcastle United, and therefore I've got them to finish 5th. Moving on to the top 4 now, 4th and 3rd for me are kind of interchangeable. They're rivals. It's Manchester United and it's Liverpool. In 4th, I've actually gone with Manchester United though. Mason Mount, I believe, is a very good signing. He can really strengthen that midfield alongside Bruno Fernandes and also Casemiro. I think they'll finish in a Champions League spot quite comfortably. I like Erik ten Hag as a manager. He did fairly well, of course, winning them the Carabao Cup and getting them to the FA Cup final. A very good achievement. Getting them back into the Champions League spaces as well. I think the job he did last season is actually gone under the radar a little bit. But onto the less positive side, losing a player like David De Gea will be a big loss for Manchester United. United have finally signed Andre Onana to replace David De Gea. I think he'll do really well. Of course, he got to the Champions League final with Inter Milan. Moving on, back to 3rd place, I've gone with Liverpool. Now, I'm assuming that after finishing in the Europa League spaces last season, that their main focus will be on actually finishing in the Champions League spots for this season, but I don't see why they can't challenge the top 2. Of course, if you haven't worked it out, it's Manchester City and it's Arsenal, or will it be Arsenal when they're Manchester City? But either way, Liverpool in 3rd. The signing of Dominic Szoboszlai is a really good one if you ask me when it comes to Liverpool. I believe that Jurgen Klopp would prefer to play him in the number 8 role, but perhaps if he changes formation, then he could play out wide. I know that him and Christopher Nkunku were cooking up things for Leipzig in the Bundesliga last year. Those two played really well together, 2 of their best players. It's a shame for RB Leipzig, but it's a huge game for Liverpool. I was gutted that Newcastle didn't trigger his release clause, but if you're a Liverpool fan right now, you have to be really happy with this signing. Of course, they have lost a few players, including Roberto Firmino, which is quite a shame for them. Carvalho also going to Leipzig, but I mustn't fail to mention the signing of Alexis McAllister. I spoke about how big of a loss he is for Brighton, but I want to speak about how much of a gain he is for Liverpool. Someone who is of course an attacking, more creative midfielder, but also can play towards the number 8 and also defensively in the number 6 role. So yeah, a couple of brilliant signings there for Liverpool. I think they'll finish 3rd, possibly 4th, but I definitely believe that a Champions League spot will be awaiting them come the end of the season. Finally then, moving on to the top 2. Now, I've been so undecided who to go with as champions and who to go with in 2nd place. Now, ordinarily I would just say, yep, Man City, they're going to win it every single year because their squad is too strong, but the loss of Ilkay Gundogan is absolutely huge. His overall playmaking and controlling the game was really good for Manchester City. Of course, he captained them, winning the Premier League, the FA Cup and the Champions League to complete the treble. He's now gone to Barcelona. For his replacement though, Mateo Kovacic, isn't exactly a bad one if you ask me. But the question is, will they have enough to win the league again? Can they do it? They completed everything really last season. Of course, Erling Haaland was at the heart of that, playing a key role, scoring so many goals throughout last year's campaign. And that's why, as much as I would love it to be a little bit different and for Arsenal to win the league, despite me not really being a huge fan of Arsenal, I think Manchester City will finish 1st and Arsenal will finish 2nd. So then moving on to Arsenal, they've just signed Declan Rice for £105 million. What a signing. Someone that can really really boost that midfield, playing in the 6 role or the 8 role when called upon, depending on what Arteta wants to do. Perhaps when he's playing alongside Thomas Partey, that midfield is pretty hard to break down if you ask me. I can't forget to mention though that Granit Xhaka to Bayer Leverkusen is brilliant for them, but also a fairly big loss for Arsenal. Now, of course, a few years ago, Granit Xhaka and Arsenal fans weren't really on the best of terms, but wow, did they manage to turn that around. Xhaka was actually quite an important player for Arsenal last season, and he will be missed by the Arsenal fans, that's for sure. I know they've released a few players, but the signings of Kai Havertz and Jurrien Timber will definitely boost Arsenal. Now, I really do want to say that they're going to win the league, just so it's a bit different, but I just think Man City are just too strong, to be honest with you. But regardless, Arsenal have a very good attack, especially with Jesus leading the line. Saliba's also signed a new deal for Arsenal. Things are looking bright if you're a gunner at the minute, but for me, I think they're just going to miss out. I don't think it will be quite the same as last season though. I think Man City will lead for longer periods. I do think that Arsenal will be top at some point, but when it comes down to it, Pep Guardiola, he just knows how to win, and I think he will win the league for Manchester City again. But that is that. I've been speaking for ages now, so guys, please let me know in the comments below where you think your team will finish, and let me know whether you think you'll have a good season, which signings you would like to bring in for your team, and also if your team's lost any, which of those will leave the biggest gap in your side squad. But that is that from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Plenty of content coming soon, and also I'm off to Germany. I mentioned it a few videos ago that I'm going to Cologne soon. I'm going to watch Bayer Leverkusen take on West Ham the 5th of August before the start of the season, the final friendly for a lot of teams before the season gets underway. I don't know which game I'll be at on the first day of the Premier League season. That is still undecided, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon.